In this video on making a book in the style of Japanese bookbinding known as Fukuro-toji or pouch binding, I'm going to show you how to make the covers. For the cover material, I find that scrapbooking paper works well and comes in a variety of fun designs that you can find at your local craft store. You can also use fabric that has been backed with kozo, mulberry, or rice paper. It's a Japanese style of paper. It goes by different names in the US. So our cover is going to initially be bigger and be folded in. So it's going to be 5/8 inch bigger on the foredge, that is the front folded edge, and top and bottom, and approximately 5/16 inches bigger along the spine. The purpose of the different measurement on the spine is that when we fold it under, we don't want to have to punch through added bulk when we punch the holes for the outer binding. So we want wherever the end of our folded under portion to be somewhere inside of the line where we're going to do the binding. So 5/16 is a nice number. So the way I like to do it is I like to take a corner of my scrapbooking paper and I will draw 5/8 inch for the foredge and either the top or bottom. I usually do it in regular pencil, but this white pencil shows up better. And that way I know I have a nice 90-degree corner here. This method works great for plain colored papers like this one, or for all over designs like this. If you have a design though that has a very clear design element that you want centered, then you may have to adjust where you're going to put the book so that you can center your design. And note that I am drawing on the back side of the paper, not the front side. So once I've got my lines drawn, I will take my book, I will line it up on those lines, and then I will trace the other two edges. I could also measure my book, make sure that I'm very certain on the measurements, and then use my quilting square or a ruler to just measure where these two lines should go. But I like to do it using the book itself. That way I don't have to worry about my measurements being just a little bit off. So to make this easier, that's 5/8 of an inch. That's 5/8 of an inch. We're going to do 5/8 of an inch on the top. I'm intentionally extending the lines out here because I know I'm going to put the other side cover on right over here. So that's 5/8 of an inch. And then I'm going to roughly eyeball 5/16 of an inch here at the spine. Like I said, the exact measurement is not critical. I just want it to be wide enough to easily fold over, but skinny enough that when I do fold it over, it will fall inside spine side of this line where I'm going to put my stitches. So this one is 5/16. So that's one cover. And then I'm going to mirror that. It's less important for a solid color or an all-over design like the one I'm using. More important if you have a distinct and clear up and down to your paper. such as this other paper that I have. You want to make sure, because one cover will be on the front and one on the back, you want to make sure that the top is the top for both of them. If you mirror them, you do that. If you do them both unmirrored, then you're going to have to flip one of the pages upside down. And I mean, if you want to do that, you're welcome to it. I think it looks a little funny. So that's 5/16. And then I'm going to take my book, going to stick it in the crosshairs, and I'm going to trace the other two sides. That. This should be 5/8, and I'm going to double check that. Indeed it is. And then I'm going to do 5/8 over here. Normally I don't write the measurements on there, just figured it might be easier. So, now I've got my covers drawn, I'm going to cut them out. I have difficulty cutting straight lines with scissors, so I use a rotary cutter and a straight edge. Works wonderfully. In this case, it didn't quite cut all the way through, so I'm going to do another pass. That happens sometimes with thicker papers like this. And if you have a thinner paper that you want to use anyway, you can always back it with the paper I mentioned earlier, the rice, mulberry, or kozo paper, goes by different names, the same way that you would fabric. And the reason for doing that is because the glue will seep through the looser weave of the fabric or the lighter papers, and you would rather you do that before you've placed it on your book. So you back it with another layer of paper, and then the glue won't seep through as easily. And there we have our covers. And I can show you more clearly now what I meant earlier with the top and bottom. If I were to cut both pieces out like this, my spine side is both over here. So when I end up putting it onto my book, because the way you put it onto a book is like this, the spine sides together, I would have to take my other piece and flip it around. For a solid colored paper or one with no clear top and bottom, it doesn't really matter, so you can cut them out like this, or like this, or like this, or whatever you want. But if there's a clearly delineated top and bottom, you need to make sure you mirror them when you cut them out. So there's two different ways to go about this next step. And the next two steps include attaching the cover to the book using a small bit of glue in the center of the page, and folding in these edges around the book. The more traditional way to do this is to glue the cover to the book and then crease and fold the edges. The slightly easier way to do it, if you trust that you have made these lines exactly where they need to be, is to crease and fold it first and then glue it on. I have two covers, so I can show you both ways. I'm going to start with creasing it first and then gluing it on, because it's a little easier for you to see what I'm doing when I do it that way. So I could take a straight edge and line it up with my line, or I can just eyeball it. Kind of depends on whatever I'm in the mood for, slash I don't see, oh, there's my ruler. Alright, I'll take a straight edge. So I'm going to take a straight edge, line it up along my line, take my creaser, or if I don't have a creaser, fingernail works great. And the point here is you're just lightly creasing the paper so that it will fold nicely along the line that you've just creased. Works better with a creaser, but it will work with your fingernail or the back side of a needle or the back side of a pin or a mechanical pencil that doesn't have the lead out, or anything else that's tapered down to a fine point but is not actually sharp. You don't want something sharp because something sharp will actually cut the paper. That's not what we want to do here. So I'm going through and I'm creasing all of my lines. And then starting with the spine edge, I'm going to fold them in. So you get a nice, fairly straight line with much less effort. You crease it first. And then I'm going to crease it down. Again, creaser's great, or the back of your thumbnail will work. And then I'm going to do the top and bottom edges. And then I'm going to do the foredge. So as I mentioned before, the foredge is the forward edge or front edge of the book. And in our case, that's the folded edge. Alright, so at this point, I like to check and make sure that I did actually do the lines correctly. So I'm going to make sure that it lines up nicely with my book. Looks like it does. I don't want it to stick out. It's okay if it sticks out just a little bit past the edge of your book block. You don't want it like super far out past the edge of your book block. And then there's a lot of added bulk here at these corners that would be not super optimal. It provides an opportunity for additional wear on the covers, or for dust or insects to get in and cause damage. So we want to reduce that. So the way we do that is we're going to clip the corners off. I generally will just eyeball it, but we're going to do this first so you can see where I'm going to cut it. So I'm cutting it from the point where the two sides meet out to just off of the exact corner. So I don't want to cut it straight to the corner, I'm cutting it just off of the corner. Take my scissors. Like that. Now if you open it up, there's also this extra little flap here that you can, if you want, clip off as well. I usually do. At least when I do things this way. When I do things the more traditional way, it's harder to get to this corner, and I sometimes just leave it. I'm going to make sure to fold them back like that. Ta-da! And then we're going to do the other corner. Same deal. Except we're going to skip the part where I draw a line first. Because I don't usually use it, I just eyeball it. Corner off, and then fold it back. Same thing here at the back two corners. And we've made our book cover. Alright, so I'm going to take my glue, For this one I'm using rice starch glue. This stuff comes in powder form. You mix it with water, microwave it, and it forms a paste. You can also use PVA glue, either the fancy bookbinder kind or just basic Elmer's glue. Works fine for practicing and learning with. Going to dab just a small amount of glue in the center. I don't need a lot. The point here is that we're going to tack the cover down to the book block while we're working on it. The glue is not really what secures the cover to the book. The stitching we're going to do later is what does that. And then I line it up. Make sure it's all lined up. And then I just sort of gently press down in the center to adhere the glue. Clearly I didn't use enough glue. So let me put some more glue in. All right, let's try that. I'm going to make sure the spine side is on the spine. Okay, that worked better. So that's the easier way to do it. At least I find it easier. The more traditional way to do it is we're going to attach the cover to the book first, and then we're going to do all of the creasing and folding. So we're going to take a little bit of glue, and we're going to stick it in the center. Use a little more glue than last time, because I learned the lesson. And then we're going to make sure that we put the spine side towards the spine. Okay, we're going to take the book and flip it over. We're going to do our best to line it up with the lines that we drew to make our lives a little easier. And then we're going to gently press down in the middle to set the glue on the other side. And then what we're going to do, we're going to take our creaser and we're going to run it along the edge of the book block. So this is a good method to do if you aren't really comfortable measuring the book and then tracing around it, or if you're not really sure that you're going to do it quite right. This enables you to make these creases and lines exactly where the book block is on your cover. The one thing you do have to watch out for doing it this way, though, is to make sure that your book block doesn't shift around while you're working on it. So that's why I was placing pressure downwards to keep everything in fixed position relative to each other while I worked. And then we're going to, it's kind of difficult to show you, but I'm folding up the spine side and then folding it under, lifting up the book block to get the spine side under, and then creasing it. And you do the same thing here. As you can see, this is almost a task that requires 3 hands. One to hold the book block and 2 to fold it over. But I've only got 2, so I'm making do. This corner doesn't like me. That's okay. You can't really see me do it, but I'm doing the same thing that I was doing on the other cover, where I'm folding everything in, creasing it down, And then I'm going to trim the corners. So, as you can see, I didn't do quite as good on the corners. It's a little more difficult when I can't see it very well. And that's it. And I try and smooth down here in the center where the glue is applied. It has a tendency to lump just a little bit, so I try and smooth that down to help prevent it from lumping quite as much. At this point, I find it's generally helpful to go ahead and apply binder's clips to hold the cover in place while we punch and sew the holes that we're going to do later. You want to make sure that you're placing your binder's clips on your foredge, not on your spine edge. You can, if you prefer, just trust the glue to hold it, but since I generally do this while the glue is still wet, I prefer to have the binder's clips to help hold things in place. And that's how you make the covers for the Fukuro-toji style books. The next video will show you how to do the actual stitching for the outer binding. So stay tuned.